year two. We understand a lot of those things necessary to be competitive and win games. Now it's how do you do it week in and week out.
As the Tigers host Grambling inside Tiger Stadium for the home opener.
Touchdown, Mighty Tigers!
Coach Kelly is coming up, but first, from inside the Capital One studio on the campus of LSU, here are your hosts, former Tiger Gordy Rush and the voice of your Fighting Tigers, Chris Blair.
All right, well, good Tuesday. We certainly hope you had a good Labor Day. I know it was tempered a little bit with the opening game on Sunday. Hey, we'll get into a lot of that here as we welcome you into the Brian Kelly press conference, week number 2 of the season. First home game coming up this Saturday as a historic meeting. First time ever. LSU going to host Grambling inside Tiger Stadium again with kickoff at 6:30. But let's join Gordy Rush. And, Gordy, let's talk about Sunday night. Again, as a top 10 matchup, it was, the best matchup. And really, arguably, when you look across the schedule, not only was it the best matchup, 2 ranked teams in the top 10, to open week number 1. It's really, I think, going into the season, one of the best non-conference of the Power 5 all season long. Obviously, Texas and Alabama would make an argument for their game coming up this week. But without question, all eyes were on Orlando. And I know talking to you before we went on the air, you kind of mentioned, hey, you went back, I went back, looked at the film, you broke it down and felt like there's plays here and there that made the difference in that game where they made it. LSU didn't, but overall, you're not as down on the Tigers as we get ready for week number 2.
17-17 with 3 minutes left in the football game. And at that point, Florida State really took over. They were dominant from that point on the offensive and defensive line. They made the plays when it counted. Keon Coleman was spectacular, and they were the better football team on the night. Some first game things that were out there, some execution problems. We know about the 4th down and down the goal line and some of those things. There were drops. There are lots of things to clean up, but give Florida State credit. They were the better team.
Statistically, as we went through the game, we kept kind of taking a look at what both offenses were doing. And I think coming into the game, we knew there were returning skill players on offense. And I think even looking back to last year's meeting, we all felt like both defenses with the returners were going to be better. And again, the score is lopsided. When you dig into the stats, where are the positives? And I know it's easy. That's what we do. We look through purple and gold lenses, and we can be accused of that, and that's just fine. But the truth is, this was week number 1. So if you're going into week number 2, and I'm sure Coach Kelly coming up at high noon will talk about the things they want to correct and correct immediately. There's plenty of that. But I also think there were some positives. When you look into that stat line and not the score, what did you like?
Well, I think Jaden did some good things. When you look at Jaden's stat line, threw for over 300 yards, made a lot of big plays in the passing game, and then he made some plays with his feet. Unfortunately, there were some drops at some critical times that could have been game changers or change the momentum of the football game. And then secondly, I don't think you want Jaden Daniels to continuously be your leading rusher. And so while that's good, at some point, you've got to be able to establish the run, and LSU was able to do that. I thought the running backs combined for 12 yards, and of that, Josh Williams really had one big hit, and then there was minimal yardage. And I think the idea was with a returning offensive line, new tight ends, a stable of running backs, that this was going to be more of a balanced attack, and they weren't going to be as dependent on Jaden running the football. That didn't happen on week 1. And I thought Wingo played good at defensive tackle. By and large, the defensive tackles, I think, did some good things in the football game. Jefferson made some plays, and there were some individual highlights out there, but a lot to clean up. And, it starts on defense. Anytime you give up 500 yards, that's not LSU defense.
One of the things, and there were tons of storylines going into the game, matchup, that we wanted to look at. And it seemed to me, most of those who were covering this game, television, radio, they talked about Florida State's got a really good defensive front returning. LSU has some continuity and some talent on the offensive line. After the game, listening to those on television, listening to some national radio, suddenly it became Florida State has an elite defensive front. LSU's got a lot of work on that offensive line. How do you see it? And again, taking nothing away from the Seminoles,
right?
But how did you see that matchup in the trenches?
I think Florida State does have a fantastic offensive line, and again, LSU's inability to run the football with someone not named Jaden Daniels is definitely an area of concern. And then I think LSU became one-dimensional. They got behind, and they were able to pin their ears back and get after Jaden a little bit. Yeah, I think the defensive line, Verse in particular, is fantastic. They played some young guys a year ago. They got a transfer in there. They were really effective. But, again, when you get one-dimensional in this league and you can't run the football, it makes it really hard. It makes it hard to continue to have success on offense.
Yeah, and I think, Florida State's defense we saw certainly could bode well in the SEC. And I say that just simply because even to Coach Kelly's point at SEC Media Days, I mean, he said what you just said. I mean, you got to run effectively, and they're going to have plenty more teams on the schedule that will provide the kind of defensive front and front seven that we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, I think Florida State's very good defense. And you look at the schedule after watching Clemson and Duke last night, you got a feeling Florida State has a chance potentially to run the table in the ACC. That being said, LSU's got to get better. I think everybody expected that they were going to be better. As well as LSU threw the football, there were still drops. I thought Florida State's DBs, particular, they got after Malik pretty good. I thought they were real effective in some bump and run coverage, and the separation wasn't there quite like I thought it would be there. There's some cleaning up to do in the passing game as well as they threw the football.
Yeah, and I will say, we mentioned on the radio broadcast a number of times, you and Doug, even when we made great throws and great catches, I mean, you had to tip your cap to Florida State. They made the tackle immediately. I mean, even when we got a little separation, pass was on the money, we made the catch. There wasn't a chance to really get out and get away.
Yeah, conversely, you look at LSU's secondary, they weren't able to make a play. There were missed tackles in the passing game. There were blown assignments on the big 4th and 2. Deuce Chestnut comes in, gets caught up in the wash. He's a cornerback. He's got to stay outside. That sets up a second half touchdown on the slant play. Early Coleman's first touchdown, free safety. Andre Sam just takes a bad angle. He's got to be able to bring him down. They're playing man free. He's got to make that tackle. You didn't see those sort of errors out of Florida State except for the late touchdown to Brian Thomas Jr.
Again, we mentioned on the air that we didn't call Harold Perkins Jr.'s name a lot. I think Florida State knew what he could do. They did a good job avoiding him, if you will. And then there were times, on the double pass that they attempted, that they completed. He was getting there, and two Tigers run into each other. That gave the passer, as it were, the chance to sneak away, get across the field, and complete that pass. But one thing I'll say, and I think you and I talked about it week 3 for the Brian Kelly press conference a year ago, as that Coach Kelly, his staff, not afraid to make changes, and not afraid to make changes early. And we saw it from last year's opening game to the game against Southern in week number 2. And I don't know how much we'll hear today, because obviously it's the start of the week, but it wouldn't surprise me if we don't see some changes, not only maybe personnel, maybe even schematically on Saturday, because while Florida State possesses a 6'7", 240-pound receiver in Johnny Wilson, and Keon Coleman was the belle of the ball in college football after the game Sunday night, truth of the matter is we may not see that type of combination, but we are going to see teams down the road in the SEC that are going to put the ball in the air.
Oh, absolutely. And that brings into play, I think, teams that probably you're probably more concerned with right now, the Ole Misses and the Mississippi States that want to throw the football because you looked a little suspect on the back end. Look, I think the Harold Perkins question is going to come up today. Moving into inside linebacker, I thought he did some good things, and at times he's playing on his heels, and you just didn't hear his name a whole lot. And I thought Florida State really did a good job of game planning. When he did get kicked down, the ball came out quick. They ran some screens at him. They threw a 3-step fade, the touchdown to Burns when they saw Perkins was there. So they were prepared for him. The bottom line is defensively, you got to be able to play some complementary football. And if you're struggling to cover in the back end and you just rush 4, you've got to get home with 4. And there were too many times that LSU didn't get home with 4 in which Travis was able to buy time and make things happen. And I'll tell you this, Chris, there's nobody in the secondary can guard for 7, 8, 9 seconds. you can't give the quarterback that much time. So I think that definitely we'll hear about Perkins and see if they make some adjustments there.
Well, it looked like overall the Tigers came out of game one relatively healthy. I'm sure that'll be addressed as well by Coach Kelly coming up in about 11 minutes from the Lawton Room inside Tiger Stadium. We're going to take a quick break. We come back. Again, it's a historic meeting. First time ever, Grambling and LSU on the gridiron. We'll tell you a little bit about what to expect from Grambling as we lead you up to the Coach Brian Kelly press conference presented by McDonald's.
Swinging at Golf Suites, your #1 destination for golf, food, and fun. Whether you are looking to enhance your game using state-of-the-art TrackMan technology or simply want to relax and enjoy an ice-cold beverage and delicious meal on our 6,000 square foot deck at Golf Suites, we guarantee a good time and even better company. And there's more. Whether it's a corporate outing, a birthday bash, or any group event, Golf Suites is your go-to venue for both small and large gatherings. Golf Suites. It's time to find your sweet spot.
Albertsons is making shopping and saving easier than ever. Check out Albertsons For You in our mobile app where you can shop for groceries and save weekly with digital coupons all in one place. With Albertsons For You, you can earn rewards points every time you shop and redeem them for free groceries. Brand new Albertsons For You members receive $5 off their next $25 purchase just for signing up. Download the Albertsons app or go to albertsons.com to sign up. Albertsons, fresh food, local flavors.
If SEC football runs deep in your veins, then Sirius XM SEC Radio is what you need to listen to. We're talking conference and team previews, plus hear live games, news, and analysis from experts like Chris Doering, Aaron Murray, and Max Starks. Go in-depth with your favorite team with coaches shows, championship specials, and more. Get inside SEC football like nowhere else. Feed your fandom on the Sirius XM app. Stay up to date anywhere you go. Just download the app and start streaming.
Tiger fans, this is Eddie Kennison, former LSU football wide receiver. If you know me, you know I'm all about making big plays.
Tigers win! Tigers win!
That's why I joined the team at LSU Sports Properties. Our goal here is to help businesses make big plays both on and off the field. If you want to give your brand that competitive edge and be a part of the biggest stage in college sports, give the corporate sponsorship team at LSU Athletics a call. Your brand, our fans. Utilize the power of LSU Athletics to promote your business and sponsor LSU Athletics today. Call 225-578-2788. Go Tigers.
Coach Kelly is just moments away from previewing the week for the Fighting Tigers. This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by McDonald's.
We're about
Once
8 minutes
again,
away or so.
Here are Gordy and Chris.
Yeah, sorry. I'm shot out of a cannon, you know. We got back early on Monday morning. I rested up yesterday, Gordy. I'm sure you did. And I think like everybody else, they're ready to see the Tigers get back out on the field. And you typically hear from coaches and players that is the case after a tough outing. But there are several days, and we'll talk about the matchup with Grambling coming up. I think it goes without saying. You go in, have that opening game, don't perform in certain areas the way, maybe you thought you would or thought you could. So no disrespect completely to Grambling State, but it, to me, doesn't really matter who they were playing this coming Saturday. It's about fixing LSU. But again, it's nice to be back home at Tiger Stadium for the first time this year. It'll be a Saturday night in Death Valley, which is always a special treat. Only so many times a year you can do that. And at 6:30, it will be for the first time ever, Grambling and LSU playing football.
I think it's a great thing that LSU's playing Grambling. It's the first time, as you've mentioned. Also, you're keeping the money for those games in this state to help a program like Grambling. Yep. I think that's absolutely huge. Nothing but class out of Hugh Jackson, who's in his second year up at Grambling. He was 3-9 a year ago, inherited a messy situation, but I think brings great stability. The former Cleveland Browns head coach has been an offensive coordinator at the highest level. He's got John Simon and Tony Hall and a host of New Orleans, Louisiana, Mississippi guys on that staff that I think can put some stability at that program. That being said, you're right. This is all about LSU. And I think the big thing I keep pointing out with this schedule, and the tricky part of this schedule, Chris, is that 3 of the next 4 games after Grambling are SEC games, and they're on the road. So you want to see some young players or you want to do some tweaking, which LSU needs to really do both. This is the game you got to do it.
Speaking of which, Grambling last week in a shootout in their first game and got down big early and, it's one of those things, and I've been on the other side of this, as I've mentioned before, an FCS team when I was at Georgia Southern, going and playing the Power 5 on the road. And the biggest thing that those coaches were always concerned about were, are we going to get, down in the dumps early when it's quickly 21-0, 8 minutes into the ball game. And that was kind of what they were trying to pump the teams up to do is, look, we got to keep swinging, because in the same way LSU's just trying to get better for their conference, we've got a chance to go against the best. So we need to do everything we need to do to try to get better against our competition. And at least on paper, looking at this Grambling team, when they got down early, they kept swinging, made it a ball game, certainly late.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of this game on the plane over. They were down 21-9, and they rallied back in the second half, and it was on the arm of Miles Crowley, and they're going to throw the football. Everybody knows about Hugh Jackson. That was one of the staples of his teams in the NFL. They threw the football well. He was 25 of 38, 311 yards and 2 touchdowns. He got sacked. He got hurried a lot. They struggled to protect him. And look, I think this is, again, this is LSU's going to win this football game. But they need to see this, Chris. I think you're going to see a throwing football team in Starkville, although it's a different looking, it's not an air raid attack, it's a different looking offense. You're going to see it against Arkansas with Jefferson. You know what Lane's going to do, and Missouri's going to sling it. And that was the weakest part of the football game for LSU was past events. They got to clean it up. Starts this Saturday against Grambling.
In previous years in these types of matchups, when you're the overwhelming favorite, you usually get a chance to really see your special teams in action quite a bit, from kicking point afters to kicking off, and to receiving punts and getting kickoffs. We've talked about what changes we may see this week. I'm sure this is another topic that will come up today once Coach takes the stage, and that is special teams. Again, I thought Jay Bramblett did a good job. He's been solid since arriving here. Nathan Dybert did his job, as well as Damian Ramos, again, who gave the Tigers a 17-14 lead in the waning moments of the second quarter. On the receiving side, we saw some changes during the game on Sunday.
Right.
You expect to see some experimentation still going into week number 2?
Aaron Anderson looked shaky on that muff punt, and so that was the first time, truthfully, because he was hurt. So it's the first time that he's done that in 2 years. And then you put him in the college environment, and he is electric when he catches the football. I've seen it, Chris. He can get after it a little bit. This is absolutely a game. If you can't go back, and we saw Clayton last year, and I thought he did a nice job under the circumstances. But you need positive plays in the punt game, and you want to put Anderson back in this game and give him a chance to return.
And I know Coach Kelly also addressed the fact that there's going to be just certain rules on even kickoff returns as far as when it's time to utilize the fair catch and when it's time to maybe try to make a play.
And I understand the momentum was going the wrong way, and some folks rolled the dice, but you play the percentages. And in this day and age, with the way that they're covering kickoffs and the rules, and you can fair catch, take the ball at the 25.
What are you most looking forward to? We've talked about some of the positive from Sunday. We've talked a little bit about what we think will be addressed by this coaching staff this week in particular. But what are you going to be looking for Saturday night when you get down there on the sidelines to see, again, personnel-wise or even schematically, what do you think your eyes will be locked into?
3 things. Offensively, they've got to establish a run. We didn't see that at all, and I know some of what Florida State's personnel dictated, spreading the field and doing that. Number 2, what happens with Harold Perkins Jr.? Are we going to see him some different places? What's the reaction from this football game? And number 3, what's the personnel grouping in the secondary? Ashton Stamps is a guy that's had a great camp out of Rummel High School, 4-star, 5-star kid that played a little bit of dime in this game where there are a couple of injuries. This is the time, if you're going to play some young folks, you need to put them in this game. Do we see some of those young DBs and see if they can compete?
Again, it will be the first meeting ever between Grambling and LSU, 2 very storied programs, as we all know. And to Gordy's point, I've always thought it's the way to do it. LSU has certainly done it that way. If you're going to continue to schedule FCS games, make sure you're doing that with the programs within the state. And it's great to see in back-to-back years, LSU will be taking on an HBCU for just the second time. And it will be Grambling and LSU coming up on Saturday night at 6:30. And Gordy, it's always fun to be back. And the one thing I do know is I've even gotten calls. I've only been in the state 8 years.
Yes.
And I'm getting calls from the Grambling folks wanting to know if I have tickets. they're coming. They're excited. Hopefully LSU fans want to get back out here and enjoy Saturday night in Death Valley. It could be an electric crowd, at least by kickoff.
You know where our office is on Government Street. It took me an hour and 5 minutes to get here. I left at 3 o'clock. That's Alabama traffic. So I make sure that you leave a little early. And, yeah, I think when you see the number of people that just came out to tailgate and stay and watch a game on TV and celebrate this, it's great for the state.
One of the things, we did travel on Saturday with the team for Sunday's game, but we got a chance to see some of the rest of the SEC. Anything stand out to you, either through highlights or actually watching a game while we were waiting around Saturday?
I think of note, because we play them in 2 weeks, is Mississippi State, and I was really interested to see what they were going to do offensively. And they ran a lot of different looks. It was multiple formations. It was not the air raid, and I think it took Will Rogers a little bit of time to settle down. My eyes are going to be on that Arizona game, get a chance to see it. Arizona, a much improved team, is going to travel to Starkville, and we'll see how that offense continues to develop in this new-look Mississippi State.
All right, again, we're told that Coach Kelly is inside the building. He'll be making his way to the podium here in just a moment. Want to invite you back again next week for the Brian Kelly press conference. We'll be back on Monday, of course, as we get ready to go on the road to Starkville. Speaking of watching the SEC, what do you think, real quick? What do you think? Texas, Alabama.
Whew, I like Alabama at home. Too much firepower.
There you go. All right, let's go to the Lawton Room. Here's Coach Brian Kelly.
The game from Sunday, first, Florida State. We had a lot of young players involved, and this is not to set up the mea culpa. That was a disappointing performance. Nobody's happy with it. Nobody from LSU fan base should be happy with that performance. I'm certainly not. We're disappointed. But we had 11 true freshmen on that trip, 5 first-time starters, 4 on defense, and we had 14 transfers. So 50% of that roster was going through it for the first time. And I think my comments, I want to kind of elaborate. I said, this is not the team I thought it was. It has nothing to do with their physical ability. I knew who they were physically. But, when you're playing and competing at the highest level, this is about a connection between the mental and the mental preparation, the mind and the body. And there was a disconnect there. The disconnect was, it's a hard game. The game of football requires a competitive edge that we lacked, in particular the second half. As you know, we got outscored 31-7. So understanding and recognizing how our team was thinking and what they thought about themselves and their beliefs and all of those things come into question when you talk about the performance. Because it's not just about talent. It's the ability to put talent and certainly the right way of thinking and what they believe. And certainly that belief was misguided. And that falls on my shoulders. In terms of messaging, in terms of how we get our players to understand that this game of football is very difficult. It's hard to win, especially when you're playing a top 10 opponent. You have to play with a competitive edge, which is a combination of a sense of urgency and emotional control. Those two coming together. Then finally, you've got to play with an attention to detail and focus. And all of those things, you can pick out situations throughout the game where those didn't come together. So it's my job to make sure that occurs and that we get that taken care of so we can put the right LSU football team on the field. And that didn't happen. That falls on my shoulders. It's my job to get that corrected, and we will moving forward. So that's a little bit about the comments I made after. Look, there were some individuals that did some really good things, but it's pale in comparison to, at the end of the day, you're looking for wins. So stand up here and talk about different players and what they did do. This is about a full team. coming together and delivering their best when their best is needed. And I did not have them delivering their best when their best was needed. So that's where we're at. That's where we need to get to. And we'll get there. Because I promised LSU fans that we would play this game the right way, and that's not the right way to play LSU football. So we moved to Grambling. Excited about a home game, obviously, and playing in front of our home fans. Clearly an HBCU school like Grambling, one of the historic programs in college football. We all would identify Grambling with the great history of titles and national titles, and certainly great players in Buchanan and Doug Williams, and certainly the great Eddie Robinson. So Hall of Famers and Willie Brown, I could go on and on. This is exciting. I know for anybody that follows college football, to top it off, it's a school in state as well. So I know our team is excited about getting back out there and playing the game the way it's intended to be played for 4 quarters, not for 2 quarters. Hugh Jackson, I think, is an NFL head coach that has had great experience now coming into the college ranks, well respected. I respect what he's been able to do. This is a reworking of his roster in 1 year. This is a totally different looking football team. They lost to Hampton in a really good match, and Hampton's a good football team. So he's got a club that's going to be much improved over last year, and they do some really good things. Some nice players. The Crawley kid's a transfer from Alabama State. He had over 300 yards. They got some guys on their roster from Baton Rouge in their 2 deep. Some guys from Louisiana that will be undoubtedly anxious to get into Tiger Stadium and play. Matthews on defense. They've got some nice defensive linemen that can rush the quarterback. So it'll be an exciting opportunity for us to take care of what we need to take care of, and that's play this game the right way. As I said, winning's hard, and you've got to do all the things necessary to make sure that you represent the LSU brand and the history of this program the right way, and we'll get that going this week. So with that, we'll open up to questions.
Brian Wilson from The Advocate. You talk about competitive edge. So then what's the plan, I guess, and how do you go about restoring that now in the middle of a season when it wasn't evident to you in week 1?
Well, first of all, we're not in the middle of the season. It's game 1, right? And 2, it's a recognition of what a competitive edge is. And so some guys played with it and others didn't, but it's not good enough if we don't all have that same competitive edge. And as I mentioned, it's playing with a sense of urgency. It's when your offense comes out from the sideline and jogs out, to start the next possession, and the clock's running down and there's 6-7 seconds. That's not a sense of urgency. It's on defense when the backside corner's jogging across the field in run support instead of sprinting across the field like his life depended upon it. So it's coaching that. It's showing that on film. It's doubling down on the importance of playing with a sense of urgency and having the emotional control so it doesn't spill out into 10 penalties like Florida State had. We had 2 penalties in the game. So we probably had too much emotional control. So it's the balancing act of those 2 things, and knowing that we're early in the season and just have to make sure that we're accentuation on the most important facts, and that is one of the important facts.
Just curious what you saw in the film as far as Harold Perkins' performance. Can this team afford to not have him see ball, get ball?
Well, certainly a question that we have talked about. There's a lot going on, and you could clearly look at Harold and what he's asked to do versus, lining him up off the edge. Player development has to be thought about. Where he goes at the next level has to be thought about, and then impacting our team. So I think that there's a happy medium there that we could probably strike, and we've already begun to look at how we can be most effective for Harold and for LSU.
Hey, Coach, over here. Matthew Bruning with On 3. Just how did you evaluate the offensive line performance, especially in the run game against Florida State?
Yeah, I mean, we weren't, obviously feeling as though we controlled the line of scrimmage by evidence of our inability to be effective. But we got to run the football too. We didn't establish the run the way we need to. And I mean by striking on a much broader front. We've got to run it inside. We've got to run it outside. We've got to be much more balanced in terms of a running attack. Jaden Daniels can't be our leading rusher week in and week out. So our backs have got to touch the ball. So there's got to be more balance there to get a true evaluation of the offensive line. I mean, when you're talking about just a couple of carries for each back, and you're talking about read option situations with the quarterback, it's harder to get a full evaluation. But in those crucial situations, we've got to be better. There's no doubt. And like I said, there's improvement from the head coach all the way down to our manager that has to be made here from week 1 to week 2.
2 questions. You not only are getting Mason Smith back this week, but you'll have him back at Tiger Stadium for the first time in a while. How do you feel about that?
Giddy. Is that a good enough word? I'd say gritty, but giddy is the best I could come up with in one word. No, I mean, he obviously impacts our defense. He allows us to do different things, allows us to, he's a guy that can play the 5 technique. He can play the 3. He can play the 1, the 0. I mean, his flexibility on our defense provides a new dimension that we're excited about getting him back.
And how do you feel about the first down rule after playing a full game with it in effect?
The new first down rule? Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's going to cost you a few plays here or there, but I don't think it impacts the game where it changes what you do strategically. We were able to mount a drive in late in the game, and that's what you're looking for. It was late in the first half. I think we had about 57 seconds. We were able to manage because the clock stops there. So I think in the crucial situations, it's the same thing. It gives you a fair advantage. It doesn't take anything away in the crucial situations, and I think it keeps the game moving.
Brian, after watching the film, in particular the secondary, I'm curious, how much of the issues were scheme, communication? How much was their guys were just better?
Well, I think there's some technical things that we have to be better at, technique-wise. We're an inside leverage and supposed to be denying the slant, and we're letting a receiver inside us. We're supposed to be denying the post, and we're getting run by. Is that physical ability? Is that lack of technique? Maybe it's both. Look, we knew that there were going to be some matchup issues. I want to go back to where I started. And when I say this game of football is hard, it requires such an attention to detail when it comes to it's not just about your ability. You have to apply the technique and the traits necessary if you want to succeed in this game. And we just didn't do a good enough job, whether it was at the cornerback position or whether it was at the safety position. If you're supposed to be in a particular position, you need to be there. And that's where a number of things broke down for us, and in particular at corner.
Hey, Coach, this quote that was going around, we're going to beat the heck out of Florida State. It's my understanding that you said that at your coach's show in jest, and it was taken out of context.
I have no idea. I mean, look, I think you all know me. I'm pretty careful with what I say and how I said it. Never have I been cavalier or disrespectful to an opponent in my 33 years. So if somebody wants to prop up a comment like that and inflate it into something that it is not, that's what social media is about today. But I have nothing but the utmost respect for Coach Norville. I know who the opponent was. It's just not in my background or nature to make those kinds of comments.
I just wanted you to clarify because I saw it and I never heard you say it, and it didn't sound like something you would say.
Yeah, it's just like I said, the position of head coach or any leadership position, you're going to get things thrown out there that are absolutely untrue, and you have no way to combat them because you can just sometimes just throw stuff out there and hope it sticks. But that's not something that I would ever say.
Hey, Coach, Glenn West, Go247. I know you had mentioned last week that you were impressed by some of the progress the freshman class have been making. Do you expect, after a game like that, to have a lot of questions about kind of personnel and if those young guys might get some more opportunities going forward, or how do you kind of evaluate that aspect of it?
No, I think, look, anytime you have a setback, you're going to examine everything. You're not going to have blinders on and say, well, the ball just didn't bounce our way. You're going to examine everything from, play calls to personnel to what time did we leave the locker room. So all of that is under scrutiny.
Hey, Brian, Sheldon Mickles of the Advocate. You were really good last year in the red zone, and so the other night, I think twice in the first half, obviously, first two periods, you got no points. What did you detect after watching the film? What were the breakdowns there?
I think when we talk about most of the issues that we had on both sides of the ball, it will come back to being 1/11th of the unit, meaning do your job. We had guys that in situational football were trying to do 3 other jobs instead of their own job. And if we were more disciplined and more focused and had the details to their job taken care of, we would find ourselves in a different position. And that's why my comments were on point relative to after the game. We weren't who I thought we would be. I thought we would be much more disciplined. I thought we'd have a better attention to detail when it came to those things, and we did not. And that's on me. And so I have to make those changes. I have to make those corrections, and we have to do a better job there.
Brian, when it comes to Aaron Anderson, is he going to get a chance to continue to catch punts after having the muffin? Would you like to see him more involved in the offense moving forward?
Yes, he's going to stay back there. Look, he's got to catch the football. And with him, it's the fundamentals, right? It's high hands, elbows in, square platform. It's the stuff that we talk about ad nauseum from day one. And he gets away from that a little bit. He goes back to these old beliefs of, I'm better than everybody, and I can just do it. And that just doesn't work, especially when you got cats running down the field and they're on you before you know it. And then you make a slight move and, you're off-centered a little bit and the ball can squirt out. So we just got to get him to be more disciplined, keep working with him. He's a young player. We're not kicking him out of the club. We're going to keep working with him. And then, there's then that natural progression of, getting him back involved in more of the offense.
Bryce Coon, 24/7 Sports. You talked on Sunday about needing to see choices be made from this roster, from these guys. Is that something that you can see those markers during practice, or is that something that you kind of have to see during the game? I mean, when you go back and look at that, just for going forward for this week, I mean, are you really not going to see anything until they get into that game atmosphere?
No, we'll begin to see those things during the week, because we'll enact a different plan in terms of what we're talking about and what we need to see from our players. So it'll be a little bit different. We'll be able to get some instant feedback in how our guys are thinking. We got to get them to think the right way, and it starts with what they believe. And if you believe in the things that we're talking about and you're invested in them, then you're going to think the right way.
Yeah, Brian, right here, injury report update and a John Emery update.
Injury report would be Amani would still be questionable, and then the only one would be Anderson, which would be probable. And then, yes, so he's not available this weekend.
Hey, Coach, just right down here. Do you think there was enough creativity with the play calling offensively from this past week?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into creativity on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball. Look, our execution wasn't where it needed to be, right? You saw fourth down. I mean, we didn't execute to the level that we needed to execute. And then, we scored 7 points in the second half. We had miscues. We slip and fall and throw a pick. We drop some balls. It was, look, everybody's accountable. The offensive coordinator, the head coach, the wide receiver, the quarterback. We win and lose together in this. So, whatever narrative that we want to paint in this game, yeah, everybody could have been better. Yep.
Brian, I'm just curious, how much does last year's past history help in this process moving forward? Obviously, different score, but same results, and you guys were able to achieve a lot last year. Just curious, does the schedule also help you build this team as it progresses?
The circumstances are a little bit different. This team in itself requires each year's different. This team is a different team than last year's. So, and I had a reasonable expectation that we could be a little bit further along. We have to go back and make sure that we put another coat of paint on this. Is what I'm saying, and that's really the most important thing. And then we'll see where it goes from there. The teams last year were able to take hold of how hard it was to win. They had the taste of finishing last. This group did not. So it's a different team, and this will have different challenges.
Hey, Coach, over here. Jace was from Ground Football. I know you talked about the passing game with Jaden Daniels. There were some plays that y'all made, obviously, but the drop passes, the inconsistencies there. So just elaborate on just the passing game, what you thought about that overall throughout the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could go through a number of different situations. We don't get to the chains on 3rd and 5. We're short on the chains. What are you thinking in those situations? What's your thought process? We've got a drop here on 3rd and 6. We're trying to turn up field. Let's secure the catch. We're 4th and 1, and we're trying to make a play instead of reading what the defender is giving you. I could elaborate further on defense. We're spinning down a safety to sit in the curl. He's watching the quarterback. We could have been more creative with play calling. We could have been better defensively and making some less spy calls and bringing more pressure. I mean, I could attack the whole thing. The bottom line is I've got to get our football team thinking the right way and play with a competitive edge. And football, this game of football, it is hard to win. If you don't play with a competitive edge, if you are not locked in and disciplined and focused, we can have a conversation about all these things all the time. If you have a competitive edge, if you recognize how hard this game is and you're focused, none of the crap that I just mentioned will matter because they'll overcome it. Okay, thank you.
Coach Brian Kelly, this week's press conference as the Tigers try to pounce back coming up at home on Saturday night. Week 2, they'll take on Grambling. We'll take a quick break, and we will wrap up this week's Brian Kelly press conference presented by McDonald's.
It's time to score big with healthcare decisions this enrollment period. With a Medicare Advantage plan from People's Health, you get more benefits than original Medicare for no monthly premium. Benefits like $0 copays for primary care and virtual doctor visits. Part D prescription drug coverage, including $0 Tier 1 and Tier 2 generic drugs. A quarterly allowance for over-the-counter items. Plus coverage for hearing aids, dental services, and glasses or contacts. Call People's Health to learn more. 1-855-633-4207.
NIL is dominating the college sports scene, and LSU has positioned itself at the front of the pack. But to remain competitive and stay ahead of the rest, we need your support. Bayou Traditions is the official NIL collective of LSU Athletics. Join the tradition and become a member by signing up online at BayouTraditionsCollective.com. Members receive exclusive access to LSU student athletes that you can't get anywhere else. Help ensure LSU remains a leader in the NIL arena. Sign up today at BayouTraditionsCollective.com.
Unrivaled content, unprecedented access. LSU Gold, powered by Bayou Traditions, is the only place for exclusive behind-the-scenes content featuring your favorite LSU teams. It's all access to the Tigers, all year long, from pregame warm-ups to postgame celebrations and every moment in between. You can watch LSU Gold anywhere, anytime, and on your favorite device. Go to lsu.gold today to sign up for your free 7-day trial, so you can be there for each step of LSU's championship journeys. That's lsu.gold.
If SEC football runs deep in your veins, then Sirius XM SEC Radio is what you need to listen to. We're talking conference and team previews, plus hear live games, news, and analysis from experts like Chris Doering, Aaron Murray, and Max Starks. Go in-depth with your favorite team with coaches shows, championship specials, and more. Get inside SEC football like nowhere else. Feed your fandom on the Sirius XM app. Stay up to date anywhere you go. Just download the app and start streaming.
This is the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by McDonald's.
Hope to see you at Tiger Stadium coming up this Saturday. First ever meeting, LSU and Grambling. Kickoff just after 6:30. Want to remind you, coming up once again this week on Thursday, 7 o'clock, the Brian Kelly Show live from TJ Ribs. Join us for dinner or tune in all across the state and around the globe. Coming up on Saturday, our first home weekend for college football and LSU. Get things started at 4:30 with LSU Game Day. Marlon Favorite, Brandon Taylor, former Tigers, will join Hunt Palmer. And then Doug Morrow, Gordy Rush will join me inside legendary Tiger Stadium for kickoff. Again, set for just after 6:30 between Grambling and your Fighting Tigers of LSU. Want to thank you for joining us. Hope you'll be back. Assume you will. Next Monday, our regular time, 11:40. Get started with the Brian Kelly press conference. Thanks to Gordy Rush as well. And until this Saturday, this is Chris Blair saying so long, everybody.
This has been the Brian Kelly Press Conference, presented by McDonald's.